Hi, this is Bhartia and welcome to Tier Fire Insights. And today we have with us once again Matt Biilmann, CEO and co-founder of Netlify. Matt, once again, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Today we are going to talk about Jamstack. I love the word. I think it's a play on stack. And so to tell us about, first of all, the term Jamstack itself, because that will answer a lot of questions that I'm about to ask about it.
The term Jamstack got coined to describe a web architecture that we started seeing a lot of different players across the industry sort of working with and building applications and websites with without really having a common nomenclature to be able to talk about it. So early on when we coined the term, it was very much because like every time we would talk to someone working within that field, they would go through this lengthy explanation of the architecture they were using to build sites or applications. And at a point we really felt like if we all just had a word we could say that would make it much easier to visualize what it was about, to build best practices around it and so on. So the Jamstack is named like that because what happened was in a way that the stack moved up a level from older stacks like the lamp stack, where what we talked about was really very specific technologies like running PHP on a server and using the Apache web server and the MySQL database. Then with the Jamstack, we saw that the real question was what we delivered to the user in a way. So there was this idea of decoupling the front end presentation layer from the back end and having a front end that you pre-built as markup and ship directly to the browser, typically from a CDN. And then you run JavaScript in the browser as the main runtime and talk to all these different APIs and services that's become more and more common and that we today have a huge ecosystem around.
How does it change the way kind of developers consume, contribute to, and use these components of the different stacks?
One really important, like the really key point has been this decoupling of the front end of the back end and really turning the front end layer into its own thing with its own build pipeline, its own delivery pipeline, its own teams, right? And in part, that's something that's very natural to happen because the demands we have for web applications or websites today are much higher than they were earlier. We expect much higher performance. We expect at the same time more interactivity, better usability, higher standards of like real interactive deep applications and so on. And that means that we've had to add a lot of complexity to that layer. Today, like back 10 years ago when I worked with front-end developers, a front-end developer was typically someone that would get a PSD from a designer and then slice it into HTML and CSS, integrate it a bit with some PHP templates and FTP it to a server, right? But today, the typical front-end developer is working with really advanced software framework like React or Vue or Svelte or any variation of it, and are building really sophisticated software that runs in this new operating system that the browser has become. So what we saw early on at Netlify, and I think a lot of other players in the industry has seen it, is that once you really settle on this Jamstack approach as an architectural approach and say, we're going to very strictly decouple the front end from the back end, we're expecting this evolution where the back end stops being like your one big monolithic server and instead splits into all these APIs and services where some are your own, but a lot of them are other people's services like Contentful or Stripe or Algolia or Twilio or so on. Then we can around that architecture build certain standards and workflows and best practices. That means that as a front-end developer, you are able to focus very clearly on just writing your code, pushing into Git, and then just assuming that a platform like Netlify will take it from there, take it to build environments, to deployments, make sure it's optimized and fast and globally distributed, make connecting to all these different APIs easy for you, make writing the glue code you need to connect to APIs and serverless functions really easy for you, and so on. In a different sense, a key thing we've seen with the Jamstack is simply that smaller teams of web developers can build larger, more sophisticated, globally distributed applications, um, and deliver them on their own.
If you can just like list out in 4 or 5 points, summarize them, that what do they get? Like, is it about better experience, or is it better about security, is it about performance, is it about cost? Just like give me 4 or 5 points.
We actually just did this whole survey of more than 3,000 developers working with the Jamstack to hear about what they're using it for, what they care about, and so on, right? And for sure, one of the really big things that came up when we talk about what developers care about is the performance, and the user experience of working with it. Um, so we've seen that there is on our end sort of this double side to it, where there's one part that's very much about like the ease of development with the stack, the tool set and the framework that's around. Developers benefit a lot from that because it gives them more development velocity. But then there's the output, like the end result. What do you get when you build an application with the Jamstack? And there, what people listed that they really care about is performance, uptime, speed of development, and security.
And if you look at Netlify and with Jamstack, you already have very very clear vision about that. But how does the finding of this survey change your vision, or how it will kind of help you iterate on what path you have already chosen? Can you talk about some of the core findings that actually make you think, hey, you know what? Yeah, we should change that.
I would say in this specific survey, like the results we've gotten in have been more the types that confirm our belief, rather than really like change our mind, right? Like we've seen, for example, that quite a few, like 35% of the ones that responded to the survey were saying that they're building enterprise software, right? So that confirmed that we've really moved to a stage where maybe earlier in our company it was more startups and so on that would build with this technology, but today it's no longer like an early adopter situation. There's really mature companies building real world applications with that. We also saw that a lot of developers were building sites or web applications that expected very high traffic loads, like millions of visitors. And again, it also confirms what we are seeing, right? That it is an area of the industry that's really growing up, and that's starting to play a really important role for big projects and big companies. And also, like, we're launching this survey, like the results of that, we're sharing them at the world at the Jamstack conference that's virtual, right? That whole conference we've sort of centered around the situation with the current pandemic, because one of the things we saw immediately when this whole thing started playing off was lots of groups of people coming to us at Netlify, building information sharing, tracking applications, data applications, prediction applications, and so on top of the Jamstack, because of this need for relatively small distributed team to very quickly reach a truly global audience, right? So the survey also reflects that people are using to the Jamstack for those kind of use cases.